To all of the very specifically white Americans coming back from Xiaohongshu and being like, oh my god, our country is in shambles. We don't have to live like this. Welcome to the party, finally. The thing is, we've been asking you to come in for ages, and you've just been standing out in the front yard watching us through the window. What was that about? You're waiting for your friends to get here to join you?
When I went to China in the summer for the first time, I stayed in the Guangzhou area, and I wasn't really sure if I should, really leave my hotel or not, but I was so surprised that everyone, including the women, were like, just letting you know, like, if you want to go somewhere, like, don't be worried. Obviously, like, they were so courteous, and the people there were so helpful, because I went there on a work trip as well, but they were like, you could literally go anywhere at night, you'll be fine, you'll be safe. And
I'm moving to China. Fuck New York City. I am moving to China tomorrow.
I don't trust most Americans' opinion on China. I lived in China for 3.5 years, and I can tell you the news does not paint the full picture of China. It shocked me how advanced China really is.
Don't go to China, they racist. They don't like black people. That's why I left, because they hate black people. They hate black people so much, they'll fly you over there for free and give you a nice, fully furnished apartment and pay you the same salary that you are currently making in America or even more.
It's one thing to prepare for culture shock when you move abroad, but no one talks about what happens when you come back. Imagine spending months, even years, living in a place where public transport runs like clockwork, where you can walk home at midnight without a second thought, and where life feels strangely affordable. Then you land back in the US, and suddenly, the streets feel emptier, the prices feel heavier, and the news on TV sounds different. It's not just a return. It's a collision between two realities. And for many Americans who've lived in China, that collision can be jarring.
I'm moving to China. Fuck New York City. I am moving to China tomorrow. So I go ahead and create my red note, right? And I'm thinking that this place is like North Korea. Like, everybody's living in poverty, they're oppressed by their government. Oh my God, is all I have to say. The first thing I say, you guys really have to work more than one job just to survive and, like, have a home and food? What? Americans are showing their medical bills and the Chinese don't know what to do. They're like, what? They can't even believe it. They're like, ours is free, and when you go to the hospital, it's like $100, including treatment. And then people are showing their ambulance bills, because our ambulances are thousands of dollars. Theirs is free. Free. And don't even get me started on the grocery hauls. These people go in these grocery haul. Like, I've never even heard of that word here. Like, we're just like, eating crackers to survive here, to pay rent. Like, they're hauling groceries that, like, would be worth like $1,000 here. But for them, it's like nothing. And it's all healthy, high quality food. Hence why they're all skinny, gorgeous, and their skin is perfect. So I just don't have words for this. And their trains look like they came out of the year 3000. It literally looks like out of a frickin' movie. And there's no homeless people. And they're immaculate. And, like, extremely high speed. Like New York City subway. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Their cars and phones are 10 times more technologically advanced than ours. And affordable. And you know what's funny? We can't have them here. We're not allowed. They're banned. They're banned. And do not even look up Chinese kindergarten. Don't look it up. It'll make you so mad. I almost swan dove out my window when I saw Chinese kindergarten. Meanwhile, in our kindergarten, they can't even teach children, like, what's a boy and what's a girl. And they're teaching kids that they can identify as animals here in our country. So, I don't think we're the problem. I just don't think that we're the problem anymore. And this one's my favorite. They're all confirming that they don't have a social credit system like we've been told. But you know what we have over here is a credit score. We can barely do anything without it. So it's just almost like they're telling us that they have things that they don't, but we are the ones that actually have them. Interesting. So if you want to ruin your day and cry yourself to sleep every night and rethink your entire life and society and everything you've ever been told,
To all of the very specifically white Americans coming back from Jiaohongshu and being like, oh my God, our country is in shambles. We don't have to live like this. Welcome to the party, finally. The thing is, we've been asking you to come in for ages, and you've just been standing out in the front yard watching us through the window. What was that about? You're waiting for your friends to get here to join you? Sure, but you could have waited inside with us. And your refusal to do so is the reason why things are so bad now. You get that, right? So I beg of you to please do some introspection and consider why you waited so long to join the party and unpack that shit. Why did you not care until it affected you? Because everyone else has been telling you and telling you and telling you.
The first thing that hits you is the pace of daily life. In China, cities feel alive 24/7. Street food vendors open at dawn, convenience stores are actually convenient, and you can get anything delivered, from a single cup of coffee to a whole dining table, in under an hour. Coming back to the US, even in big cities, there's a noticeable slowdown. Stores close early. Public transport feels infrequent. And things that were once effortless suddenly feel like a logistical headache. I remember being in Shenzhen, stepping outside my apartment at 10 p.m. to grab a bubble tea and some fried dumplings, all within a 5-minute walk. Back home, that same craving meant a 20-minute drive, and the shop was already closed. It's not that America doesn't have convenience. It's that it comes with higher prices, longer waits, and far more effort.
When I went to China in the summer for the first time, I stayed in the Guangzhou area, and I wasn't really sure if I should, really leave my hotel or not, but I was so surprised that everyone, including the women, were like, just letting you know, like, if you want to go somewhere, like, don't be worried. Obviously, like, they were so courteous, and the people there were so helpful, because I went there on a work trip as well, but they were like, you could literally go anywhere at night, you'll be fine, you'll be safe. And as a woman who is traveling alone, that's not something that I naturally will do, because I have an instinct to not do that. I grew up in Vancouver, I've been through LA a million times, all these kinds of places, and the number one thing they always tell you, especially as a woman traveling alone, is to be extra vigilant. Being in China was the first time that I did not have that, like, extreme vigilance behind me, because going to big crowded areas, I noticed that everyone felt safe. There was no weird, like, clutching, being close kind of feeling. Being in an area where there was 5 giant malls back to back, like every single one of them had an Apple store, so they were huge malls. Not only was everything super clean, but as someone who grew up in North America and, has been to all the major cities as far as, like, visiting and, like, living in them, not all of them, I don't know why I said that, but has been to a lot of them, I could not mentally grasp the fact that there were no gates and bars and cops in this major area. My brain could not comprehend it. Looking at these buildings and being like, okay, so there's no gates that you have to close and make sure that no one, like, breaks the window randomly at night, like, that is a foreign concept. Quite literally a foreign concept.
I don't trust most Americans' opinion on China. I lived in China for 3.5 years, and I can tell you the news does not paint the full picture of China. It shocked me how advanced China really is. They use mobile payments for everything. WeChat Pay, Alipay. People don't pull out credit cards any longer over there. They have high-speed rails that go just about everywhere. In Shanghai, over the past 30 years, has developed from being a countryside to being a full, blown-out city. We don't talk about this. Also, Americans don't understand how complex China's history is. There are 1.5 billion people in China, and they have a history that spans thousands of years. You can imagine having that level of history. Why they operate the way they do and react to things now is probably due to what happened in the past. For example, so many Americans ask me, why is China so strict on drugs? We're not like that in the US. Well, China had the first and second opium wars where Westerners brought opium and it completely trashed their economy. So looking at this history, we can see why China has such a strong stance on having drugs in the country. They don't want an inefficient population. And the way I think is we oftentimes ask, like, why is technology, like, why are our products not allowed to go into China? If I'm looking at history and I'm seeing all the different ways that Westerners have come over and completely China's economy, I'm like, if I'm trying to build up a city of a country of 1.5 billion people, most of which are in rural populations, how are you going to have American technology come over and completely overtake their country? My whole thing is when we look at China, we have to understand the full picture. It can't be a comparative game with what does the US do and oh, China should do the same thing. We are very different countries. We have very different histories, and we have to understand that when we go to make a perspective, which is why
Transportation might be the single biggest shock factor. In China, high-speed trains connect cities like arteries in a living organism, running at 200 miles per hour with tickets that cost less than a night out. Subways are modern, spotless, and frequent. Even smaller cities often have public transport networks that rival America's largest urban centers. Back in the US, unless you live in one of a handful of cities with decent transit, you're almost forced back into a car-dependent lifestyle. The idea of hopping on a train and arriving in another city in an hour feels like science fiction again. And with gas prices biting into every paycheck, that freedom of movement suddenly has a cost. I still remember arriving in Beijing for the first time, hopping on the subway with nothing but a prepaid card in my phone, and realizing I could explore the entire city without a car. Back in the US, even visiting a friend across town means budgeting for traffic, parking fees, and gas.
So for some reason, it's just like hard for people to really comprehend what I'm saying. Like when you work in China, bro, they take care of everything. Like everything I'm telling y'all is 100% true. They take care of you. They give you a free flight there once you get hired, a free apartment, furnished. Everything comes included. You don't have to worry about anything. And no, they're not paying you no cheap salary. When you're going to work there as a foreigner, especially as an American, they're going to pay you comparable to what you get paid here. But the difference is you save a lot more. On top of the free flight there, the free, fully furnished apartment, and sometimes even free meals. Everything is so cheap out there. I'm talking about you don't even have to cook. $2, $3 meals that you can buy for yourself. Best public transportation in the world by far. Subway costs less than $1 to take to most places around whatever city you in. Like these job opportunities are really out there offering all of these perks and even more if you got a family. Like they really look out for their employee. They know as an American, when you're traveling halfway across the world to work for them, you're expecting the best, and they do their best to provide that for you. Like these opportunities really be clutch and like a fresh of breath air, because as an American myself, experiencing the system and not really liking it, feeling like I'm bogged down and constrained, like being able to leave the country and finally save and still live a great lifestyle at the same time was like amazing to me. And Americans should be more open-minded to exploring these opportunities, because it was absolutely life-changing for me. Like people got their thoughts about, you know, overseas and China in general, but like as a 6'8" black man, I was extremely comfortable, safe, had no problems, saved my bread, did what I had to do, enjoyed my life, and then when I wanted to come back home to visit family, did that. Everything was smooth. I couldn't believe how seamless it was for me for like, you know, going to a foreign country I've never been to before. Like I'm really telling y'all be surprised what y'all find out there, because the life I lived there was way better than the one I lived in America, I'm telling you. And I know a lot of y'all can probably relate to, you know, how stuff going on for y'all in America, but you know, for me, that switch changed my life.
I'm an American living in China, and I keep a running list of things I notice about living here. This is one of the first observations I had moving to China, and that is that they do not serve iced water, cold water when you go out to eat at restaurants. It is warm or hot water only. This took some serious getting used to, because I came to Shanghai at the end of July, and if you know, you know, the heat is crazy. So it's believed that the warmer water actually helps you digest your food better. Chinese medicine keeping the body warm helps keep everything functioning normally. So if it's your time of month, as a woman, you should be drinking hot water or warm water to help menstrual cramps as opposed to cold water, which could actually make your cramps worse. Even at the school I work at, there is a water filter machine where you can fill up your water bottle and it shoots out really warm water. Not hot, but pretty warm. Anyway, I'm totally on the warm or hot water train now, but in the summer, this takes some getting used to, and I still love my ice water in July and August.
One of the most unexpected reverse culture shocks? The way you feel walking outside after dark. In many Chinese cities, the streets stay busy late into the night. Families stroll together. Kids ride scooters, older couples dance in public squares, and food vendors keep their grills hot until the early hours. There's an underlying feeling of safety that becomes part of your everyday life. When you return to the US, that atmosphere changes. Streets are quieter. Businesses close earlier. And depending on where you live, there's often an unspoken sense of caution. You become hyper-aware again, something you stop thinking about in China. It's not that danger doesn't exist in China, but the visible sense of community, the presence of people everywhere, makes it feel different. In America, that community fabric feels thinner at night, and you notice it immediately.
Hey folks, as somebody who studied China for over 10 years, lived in the country, and worked in both countries, it has been interesting this week to see a lot of Americans go over to Xiaohongshu and learn about China really for the first time. One thing I advise is that we shouldn't look at China with rose-colored glasses. Every country has its ups and downs, just like America, just like Europe. That doesn't mean that our grievances are not valid. Just remember that there is a wealth gap in China, just as there is a wealth gap in America. It's important to try to be as realistic as possible, especially when we see these things and we kind of get angry about it. The world is a lot more complicated than our history books in school or even the media likes us to believe. Again, no country is perfect. One way I like to think about this is that by looking at the world in too moralistic terms, we hurt our relationships with other people. You've seen how the media has kind of made us sometimes hate China through moral lenses and lose the human aspect of Chinese people. But it's also led to people in America hating their fellow Americans based on ideology. But if we think for a second, a lot of the arguments that the leftists are making come from the same place as the right wing. Maybe their conclusions are different, but I believe that they're actually both connected to China. For example, a lot of you guys complaining about the cost of living in China and the living state of Chinese people is connected to the jobs going over to China over the past 30 years due to American companies bringing manufacturing over there. And that's the same thing that the right wing in America has been complaining about for the past 20 years too. I don't know if Trump's plan is going to work, but this is an area of commonality between the two people. But this doesn't mean we should be hating people who did these things. We should be asking, first, was it possible for these jobs to remain in America? Because what would have happened if those manufacturing jobs stayed in America? Well, would the pollution be as bad as China? Would inflation be even worse now than we are complaining about at the moment? Another thing to remember is politics in the world is very important. Another reason that a lot of companies moved over to America was actually out of this plan that American and European governments believed that perhaps by making China more capitalist, they would become democratic. We also need to remember that in the 70s and 80s, we still had the Cold War, and the West believed that by being better friends with China, the Cold War would end, because China had become kind of not very good friends with Russia at that time. And eventually the Soviet Union did fall in the 1990s. Hopefully you are following this. I'm just saying that there are a lot of complications in the world, and a lot of the actions that were made that led to the modern day were done through calculations sometimes based on morals. Not all of them were kind of based off this evil rich man kind of view.
Don't go to China. They racist. They don't like black people. That's why I left, because they hate black people. They hate black people so much, they'll fly you over there for free and give you a nice, fully furnished apartment and pay you the same salary that you are currently making in America or even more. They're going to invite you to dinners, give you all these free gifts that you don't even ask for. And if you got a family, yeah, they hate them too. They hate black families, because what they're going to do with black families, not only they're going to fly all of y'all out to China, not only that, if you're working for a school, if you have kids, they can go to school for free. And by the way, international schools are extremely expensive overseas. But if you work for that school will give you benefits for your children. They crazy, they racist. So please don't go to China. Don't go to China. Stay in America. America has everything you need. You can work, you can get your car, you can travel, you get a free apartment, everything fully furnished, get the full summer off, and you get a bonus every year in America. Why would you leave America? Don't leave America. America is great.
Before going to China, many Americans have a mental picture painted by years of media coverage, often highlighting censorship, political control, and human rights issues. While those topics are real and complex, living in China often reveals a side of life that rarely makes the headlines, the normal, everyday happiness of people simply going about their lives. For many, the shock isn't that the negative coverage is entirely false, it's that it's incomplete. You can live in China for years without seeing the extremes that dominate foreign news, and instead experience a society that is, in many ways, safer, more affordable, and more convenient than back home. The propaganda shock works both ways. American media paints China in a certain light, but Chinese media does the same to America. When you've lived in both, you see the gap between political narratives and real daily life.
So I've been living in China for almost 6 years now, and what still astonishes me to this day is how much food I can get in the grocery store for just $10. Chinese grocery stores were one of the biggest culture shocks for me when I first moved here. Your experience is very different than in the US. It's usually overflowing with merchandise and people, with sales being broadcasted by megaphones in multiple areas of each department at one time. The smell is different, and it can be a bit overwhelming at first. Eventually, it becomes a part of your normal experience.
Catch a whole
like
fish in that motherfucker.
watching an employee butcher your fish, or seeing live frogs in a bag. So I was able to get all of this for 80 yuan, which is $11. If you want to see more about Chinese grocery stores,
Hey, y'all seen that? Y'all seen Shawty get them fresh veggies? Shawty got them fresh fish, scaled it in the goddamn stone. Hey, man, y'all told me China was bad. Y'all told me China was bad. Hey, if I could get my groceries for $10, give me some communism. We need some communism, all right? If I can get groceries for... Wait, what the fuck we doing here? I mean, hell, we getting our rights stripped away. You know what I'm saying? We ain't got freedom of speech. We ain't got none of this shit. Hell, but at least they ain't got no rights, and they grocery $10. Hey, you gonna take my rights anyway, but I gotta pay $500 for the same amount of groceries? Give me some motherfucking communism then. Shit, our politicians are bought off by the corporations. We living in the oligarchy. It might as well be the same thing, but at least I get $10. At least I can eat. Walmart talking about you gotta pay a subscription to get goddamn self-checkout. Shit. What are we doing here, people? It's just crazy. Like, because they say China's so bad, they're the enemy, but it's like, and we be like, oh, that's just propaganda. Russia has propaganda. China has propaganda. Korea has propaganda. Do we not have the same thing? Like, bruh, our government has surveillance on us. Our government takes our freedom of speech. They want to control the media. We got monopolies. We got all the same shit, if not worse. Because we get taxed out the ass and we got to pay all this money for shit. Like, we are getting so finessed. And that's why they don't want us to know nothing about the rest of the world. I swear, if I didn't have all these dang old kids, I would be in another country. I'd probably be somewhere in Mexico. I don't know. Man, at some point, we got to realize in America, boy, shit got to change because we are getting finessed. $10 for that same little buggy. And that shit was fresh. It's coming straight from the source out there in China. Then it's like, bro, if you put that same buggy in America, that's at least $250. $250. Easy at Kroger. Or we'll say Whole Foods, because that's where our fresh stuff is at, right? Hell, the last time I remember like real like fresh fish and like lobster and shit being in the goddamn store was back when I was a kid. And they used to have the little lobster tanks at Brooks's and goddamn Walmart and shit. They don't got that no more. So what we paying for? Only thing we paying for is growth hormones and goddamn preservatives and additives and filler foods. Crazy. And so y'all be talking about inflation. Why they not experiencing inflation? We are a global economy at this point. Why are other major superpowers like Russia and China not experiencing inflation either? Why is nobody else's groceries $500?
Hey, hi, hello. I'm the guy who went to China and has been writing a Substack about my trip. And I'm trying to sum the whole damn thing up into one thing and about my greater thoughts about the difference between our two cultures. I'm running into a problem. My entire life I've been propagandized to view China and other formerly Eastern Bloc countries as totalitarian or authoritarian, right? They are a single-party system, right? Like that's how we are taught in America to view authoritarianism or totalitarianism, right? It's only one party. What can you do with just one party? That one party is the authority, therefore authoritarianism. More. Let's just go with that definition for now. I have a lot of problems with it, but we can deal with that later. I would argue the United States is also authoritarianist. Sure, we have two political parties, but they both serve the same class of people, billionaires and corporations. We cannot change anything. We cannot develop anything. We cannot progress at all. Anything or anyone who tries to progress will be shut down and taken out of office. More or less, again, there is differences around the edges here. There is still some hope, although I would argue there is less hope for change in the United States than there is in China based on my trip there. This leads to a question that I've been asking myself, which is, am I really interested in freedom, or are we just upset because we have a shittily run authoritarian state and China has a well-run authoritarian state? Just look at what the right wing is doing, not what they're saying. What they are doing is they are implementing an authoritarian regime, and they're doing a really shit job of it. Not only are they bad at executing their authoritarianism because everybody notices and finds it onerous and uncomfortable, and we feel like our rights are being stripped away because they are, but the fact that we even notice that just shows the incompetence of their approach. But the other thing is that they are trying to implement rules that don't make sense for the population. They only make sense for them at the top. They are going full exploitation, unsustainable, short-term, smash and grab, vandalism as fun, and suck everybody dry. They are vampires, not mosquitoes. If China and communism is authoritarian, then they're doing a much smoother job of it. They are developing things for their population. They are improving everybody's quality of life. They are creating technologies that are going to be used throughout the world to fight the climate apocalypse that we are all in the midst of. And they are doing it in a very smooth, non-fractious way that makes everybody feel good about what's happening. Whenever people in America would talk about the dangers of totalitarianism or authoritarianism, they would always say, specifically communism, they would always say, communism is a failed system. Socialism is a failed system, right? That was always the propaganda I got as a kid. Just look at the Soviet Union, look at the Eastern Bloc. Those people are miserable. They live in depressing block houses. Fucking sucks. I was in Romania in the 90s. I saw The Hangover. It did not look fun. So the argument was that the capitalist system is the better system. Dr. Roy Casagranda, everybody's favorite TikTok history professor, said in a podcast recently something that I thought was very interesting. He said, if you would have asked me as a young man, do I prefer a good system or a good leader, I would have told you I prefer a good system. But now that I've aged and I've seen the world a little bit, I think having a good leader is far more important than having a good system. I think that typifies the Chinese style more than anything else, weirdly. I think the Communist Party in China has figured out a way to select for the best possible leadership that they can find in any generation At least it seems that way to me. And I'm not an expert on this, so I don't really know, but this is the way it looks. The general rule of thumb is that you have guys who get promoted up into the party, and then they get promoted into leadership of, say, a province after they've done well in a city. And then if they do well in that province, they get promoted up to a bigger province, and so on and so forth, until finally the party votes for the most capable person to be the premier. You couple that with a tendency to think long-term in decades rather than quarterly or, say, 4-year increments, and you see why China is kind of dominating right now. It seems that not only have they made their system more responsive to the needs of their people, but this system is also selecting for the best quality of leadership that they have access to. Again, this is how it seems. I'm basing this not on propaganda, I'm basing this just on the results of what I saw in the country. They are doing fantastic over there. We are falling the fuck apart. So they're doing something right, and I'm trying to identify what that might be. Those are the two admittedly simplistic weights that I'm trying to weigh in my own brain. Systems versus leadership, competence versus popularity. And let's add short-term versus long-term. Planning, that is. Short-term versus long-term planning. Based on what I'm seeing, this has implications for the near future, which I think are potentially very fucking frightening. And I'll go into that in another video, if I feel like manifesting that sort of shit, which I'm not sure I want to give voice to these fears.
The final stage of reverse culture shock is a quiet one. It's not about missing one specific thing. It's about realizing you've been changed by living abroad. You can't help but compare, even when you try not to. Grocery prices, healthcare costs, transportation systems, even how people greet each other, they all look different now. This can be frustrating, but it can also be empowering. You start to see solutions America could adopt, and you carry a deeper appreciation for cultural differences. Reverse culture shock isn't just about missing China. It's about realizing that no one place has all the answers, but each place has lessons worth learning. If you've ever thought you understood a country just from the news, I challenge you to test that belief. Travel there. Talk to people. Experience the rhythm of life for yourself. You might find that the biggest shock isn't what you see abroad. It's what you feel when you come home.